Doodly-doodly-doodly-doodly-doodly-doo. Intro jingle. Hello, my name is Brian the Pirate, and I wanted to share my thoughts on the recent announcement for the quarterly update on the 29th of September for Diablo 4. I have some thoughts, I have some feelings, I have some feedback, and some positives to share. Before I dive into it, I also feel like I should preface this video with a few things to help developers who this is really aimed at, as well as just general viewers, where I'm coming from, where my perspective is built from, and hopefully that will then lead to better understanding of my criticisms and feedback and whatnot. So first and foremost, this isn't about this game's better, that game's better, I prefer blah 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 over this because this better, whatever. This isn't a war of the games. There's going to be some comparisons. I'm going to make comparisons to Path of Exile. I'm also going to make some comparisons to Last Epoch. I could also make comparisons to Torchlight, Grim Dawn. I've played them all. I'm a huge action RPG fan, but Path of Exile and Last Epoch are two that are going to be prevalent in this video because I think they are the most relevant based on the information that I'm seeing and what feedback I wish to give. I should also point out that I am a huge Diablo fan. The Diablo franchise is the one I'm probably most invested in. I love Blizzard games. I've played basically all of them. Pretty much everything from Warcraft 2 and Diablo 1 onwards I have played. Diablo, however, is my favorite franchise. The universe itself is my favorite of all the action RPG games I've played. I love Torchlight, I love Path of Exile and all that, but the Diablo universe is something particularly special to me in it's just the right aesthetic, the right themes, all that shenanigans. So I say all of this from a point of view of love. Like I love this franchise, I want it to do well. I'm pointing all this out because I don't want the devs just to think that I on the game, basically, because that's not what I'm doing. I think the updates have been very informative. There's a lot of very good things there that I will touch on in this video. First and foremost, I think I should give my opinion on Diablo 3. The reason for that is because I'm going to be making comparisons between Diablo 3 and where I see Diablo 4 currently going and what can be improved upon in Diablo 3. I enjoyed Diablo 3. I played it a lot. A hell of a lot. But in comparison to Diablo 2, Diablo 1 even, and other action RPGs, it was the one game I felt the least compelled to come back to, try new builds, come back season after season, and play for years and years and years. I played it up to maybe season 2 or 3, I think, after Reaper of Souls came out, and I've not really gone back to it since. There are a few reasons for this, and I think they all, in one way or another, come back to one simple thing, or one simple mantra or ethos, where it came to the development of Diablo 3, and that is that Diablo 3 feels like it is aimed at a substantially more casual audience. Now, I'm not saying casual like it's some slur, like if you're a casual gamer, that's fine. With some games, I'm quite casual. And I, in a lot of ways, despite sinking a good few hundred hours into Diablo 3, in comparison to how I look at other action RPGs, I had quite a casual mindset towards it. And I think that has led to me not wanting to come back to it at the end of the day. And potentially that has also led to, from my perspective, a smaller core community in comparison to some other action RPGs. Obviously, one of the main updates that we've had from the quarterly update, or one of the main sources of information we've received, is about talents and skills. In Diablo 3, I thought it was, when it first came out, it was this new shiny thing where you could take one skill and then you could change how that skill would work in 6 to 7 different ways. But then that was it. You either made a lightning meteor or an ice meteor or a fire meteor or lots of meteors or one uber meteor of death. But that's where your choices and your customization with that skill ended. Whereas in comparison, Path of Exile, you could take one skill and you can change it in several different ways. But then there are further sub branches where you could change it. So you didn't just have the 7 different options. You had essentially infinite within reason, but where the limiter was your imagination on what you could do with those skills. For example, Meteor, as I mentioned, you could do different elements or different frequencies of meteors, and that was about it. And then any other way you wanted to customize the skill relied heavily on itemization impacting that skill. Whereas in Path of Exile, with one skill, I made several different builds over the period of time that I've played Path of Exile. Flicker Strike, for example. I made a, for those who don't know, Flicker Strike is a teleport, and then you hit them from behind in the butt, and then they die. That's Flicker Strike. But it had this sub-mechanic where it would ignore its long cooldown in exchange for spending a Frenzy Orb, which is a stackable thing that you can earn. One of my builds utilized that mechanic by killing frozen enemies, and if you killed frozen enemies you generated more Frenzy Orbs, and then spending Frenzy Orbs allowed you to cast Flicker Strike again without having to wait for the cooldown, so you could just instantly just teleport all over the place and just stab everyone in the butt and everybody died. Fantastic. I then did another build where I completely changed it. There was no ice or cold attacks involved whatsoever, and it became a crit build, which was fantastic for single target damage. It generated Frenzy Orbs from crits alone, and it was great for killing bosses. The ice one was better for killing trash mobs and just completely annihilated the screen instantly. I then did another one where it was based on bleeds, where I could teleport everywhere, stack dots on everyone, and then the dots did the killing and things like that. That completely changed not just how the skill looked visually, but also how the build played and felt. And if I really, really wanted to, I could make so many more builds with that one skill alone, and then synergize it with other skills thereafter. And I'm looking at this new talent tree, and I'm seeing a lot of skills. I'm assuming all the squares are skills, but then I'm seeing very few options in how to change those skills. There seems to be maybe 3 or 4 passives per skill. Potentially, oh, here's more crit, here's a bit more attack speed, here's a wider AoE, things like that. It doesn't really change enough. And again, I would get through those options very quickly in my lifespan of the game. And one of my concerns is that Blizzard are leaning on this crutch of lowering the barrier of entry so everyone can get in and just, you know, throw skills about and play what they want, whilst also appealing to the more in-depth theory crafting audience. But it's a bit top heavy towards the casual side of things, I feel like. And that means that the more core community that will be the more likely to come back to the game and play it over and over again have less material to play with. So I think the skill trees or the talent system needs to be expanded on quite generously. I think there's a good starting point there. It does look like you have a lot of skills for the sorceress. Fantastic. But I think you need a lot more customization for just those one skills. It looks like you've got maybe 3 or 4 passives. Honestly, per skill, I think you should be looking closer towards 10. And that's where Last Epoch comes into this, because I can appreciate how people can look at Path of Exile and are overwhelmed by how much customization and possibilities there are. Not everyone's a theory crafter. Not everyone wants to look at a passive skill tree the size of a planet and go, this is going to take a while, kind of thing. Like, some folks do just want to go, okay, I want that one, that one, that one, ha ha ha, stab, kind of thing. I get that, I truly do. And I think Last Epoch meets a very happy medium where you've got this huge, infinite customization of path, that you've also got the simplicity and almost fast-paced nature of Diablo 3, where you can just be haphazard with what you want to do. The skills in Last Epoch all have their own passive tree, and they generally go in 4 or 5 different directions, and then they can be adapted further. So you could make one skill have more AoE, and then how that AoE interacts is different compared to making it more single targeted but better healing, or having some healing benefits. These are all just arbitrary examples, of course, but there's more branches to this tree, whereas the skill tree that I'm seeing here is looking very linear, unfortunately. Another thing I would like to point out with Last Epoch is the skill tree and the passive tree are separate, and I think that's one, really good, but also impactful in how much you can fit into the game in terms of the build quality as well. Because at the moment, the passives, which I believe is the lower half of this tree, the roots of the tree, there's not a lot there. And again, it's all about this build diversity. It's all well and good going, oh, here's several different builds. That it's not enough. I think we need the possibility, the potential to look at a passive tree, just the passive tree, ignoring the skills, and then going, right, I can make myself extraordinarily tanky. I can make myself tanky with shields. I can make myself tanky with energy or magic or resistances, but I could also then make myself tanky by just having an exponential amount of health. But then I could also make myself glass cannon. I could make myself summon the evil boogaloo demons of whatever. If you're a necromancer, you know, having all these possibilities of these passives that are directly influencing the character and having no impact on the skills alone. Then, of course, changing how all those skills interact with each other, how they feel, how they look cosmetically, all that shenanigans in its own tree as well. I'm not saying copy and paste Last Epoch by any means. Obviously, you want to have some originality there. This is Blizzard I'm speaking to now, but I think if you want to maximize the longevity of your game and have players coming back again and again and again and again, and ultimately spending more money on your game beyond the basic, oh, I've bought access into the game, I've bought the game. Because let's face it, we know there's going to be transactions at some point, cosmetic transactions, as I would assume and hope, and nothing beyond that. And it's going to be this core audience that's going to be what brings in your money at the end of the day. So you want to give them reasons to come back and make them want to play the game again and again before you even release additional content, and that's going to be one way to do it. The actual look of the skill tree, I think the artwork is really cool. I do enjoy the artwork. There is some accessibility issues, however. The like painted glass aesthetic is cool, but as someone with 20/20 vision, very good vision, even I'm looking at that and going, oh, that's a bit of a nightmare. Like that, I could see there's red, orange skills, presumably fire, blue skills, presumably ice, and then lightning skills, which are purple. But there's nothing that makes me go, okay, there's fireball, there's meteor, there's other arbitrary fiery based skill element, there's ice bolt, there's ice lance, there is snowball thrown from a distance. You know, I want to be able to look at a skill tree and go, this is what I want, at least when I'm more familiar with the skill tree, based on something other than just happening to know where they are. At the moment, it's just, here's lots of orange and blue and purple. I'm going to have to look at each individual one to work out where they are. And if I'm not colorblind, but if I was colorblind, I imagine it's going to be a nightmare to see some of those passives as well. Even for someone with my vision, I'm seeing some of these empty diamonds or these red diamonds and going, what? Where are they? Kind of thing. So I think as nice as it looks zoomed in, the painted glass aesthetic is a hindrance when you're using such small icons. And I think you need to rethink the color scheme in general. The artwork is dope. I like the artwork, but the combination of it all together is a bad user experience in my opinion. Okay, so as you can see here, I've zoomed in a little bit. Just to reiterate, it's very difficult to ascertain what these skills are. Maybe like this is zoomed in at 150% on a 2560 screen, but like there's very little to differentiate these skills. And again, accessibility in terms of like if I was a colorblind user, it's going to be very difficult for me to work out what's going on here. These diamonds, all but invisible even to myself, and these circles, I think that's definitely something that needs to be worked on. The navigation of the tree, do I have to go through these fire spells to get this ice, I presume ice skill, or can I just pick this ice spell and then take the other passives nearby as I wish, or is there some form of linear path? If I'm obligated to take a linear path, why? Don't make us do that, because it makes no sense in my opinion. I don't think that's the case, and I think you would know and understand that makes no sense because it seems obvious. But if that is the case, that you have to take a linear path, then don't. To be honest, otherwise, like I said, the artwork is cool. I think it looks dope. Again, very limited on how many passives there actually are for the character. Again, I assume these squares are skills. There's 28. I'm assuming these are placeholders and you've got intentions for these or something. So that's cool, but only having a couple of ice-based ones there, like I assume because these are near this one that they affect that ice skill, and any ice skills around here would not have any impact on that one. These need broadening vastly, in my opinion. And to reiterate, to give some positives throughout this tirade of criticism, and for that I apologize. I don't want this to seem negative, but I think it's great that you are going down this path where you are changing how abilities work. It just needs more. It needs to take more steps. Give us all the customization, basically. Don't be afraid of overwhelming the player to the point where you're hindering how much they can really theory craft into their builds and limiting their imaginations too much. I appreciate again that you want to appeal to that broader audience, but don't rely on it as a crutch at the same time. As I mentioned before, I think the sorceress enchantment system looks fantastic. I think that is definitely going in the right direction, and I think it is a good way to distinguish characters or classes from one another, as long as it doesn't, for the other classes, end up being something arbitrary and just merely visual. Like the armory system, I haven't played the demo that was at BlizzCon, so I can't really comment, but I don't want it to just be something that distinguishes the classes visually. Obviously it doesn't with the sorceress. There's definitely an impact on build there, but with the armory system, how does weaponization actually affect the skills? Can different skills use the same weapons, and if so, do the different weapons have a big impact on how that skill is then utilized, how it feels and how it works and how much damage it does, all that shenanigans as well. So as long as it's across the board with all the classes, I'm going to guess probably the 5 classes, wink wink. But yeah, I'm liking the enchantment system. I think that is going to have a huge impact on how the sorceress feels, and again adds to that build diversity. But again, that will also depend on how many passives there are to begin with. In fact, thinking about it, that might be one of the reasons there's few passives, because obviously the passives, I feel like, have an effect on this system. If this system, as great as it feels, is hindering how many passives you're adding, I would rather you scrap this system. Because in the long run, having a bigger, broader, wider insert word that is synonymous with all of those here system, it's going to have a far greater benefit to how much players want to play a game and how long they play a game for, as opposed to this really cool mechanic that will be nice for 1 or 2 builds and then it's done. There's little more customization to it. Some other positives I want to touch on. I think the art style is fantastic. I am so happy that you haven't given bloom to everything ever. Thank you. Light Radius, all hail Light Radius. I'm so happy you've brought that back. I think the general aesthetic of the game is fantastic. I've been looking at your press kit for when I do videos and things like that. I think the details in some of those images are amazing. The light work looks great, and presumably that will get better with some of the advances that we've had announced by Nvidia and Xbox and PlayStation. So hopefully it will be an even more beautiful engine than what we've already seen. Obviously I know some people it's not their cup of tea, but I think it's dope. So, you know, my opinion matters more. The mount system, I think the mount system looks really, really cool. I think there's a lot of potential there, both with like cosmetics, customization of cosmetics, and of course how they can implement skills. I think that is fantastic and a welcome introduction to the series. You might have your purists who will be saying, oh, we don't need mounts. Sure, but I think it's a definite positive in my opinion. One of the other things that put me off Diablo 3 or prevented me from wanting to come back again and again and again was the itemization. Not so much criticism against your current system of the ancestral, angelic, and demonic powers, but more of how the weapons worked within the build system. I, both for thematic reasons as well as for build reasons, really hope you do not scale skills off weapon damage. I think that was one of the worst decisions that was made in Diablo 3, and it resulted in the trifecta: crit, chance, critical damage, and attack speed. Every build, near enough, of course there are exceptions when you've got thousands of builds, but near enough every build relied on those 3 things to output damage. Thematically, I want weapons to have an impact on skills that involve some form of physical mechanic. Like obviously if I'm a barbarian, I'm, you know, hitting folks on the noggin. I obviously think if I use my uber over the head smash of nope and I'm using a stick that's got a blob of rock on it, dunk, it should do less damage than if I whip out my gavel of ouch, shut up, I don't think of names, and then, you know, hit them on the head with it. Obviously things like that, those types of skills should of course scale off the weapon. That makes sense, but I don't expect for you to then have that same gavel of ouch, I still think that's a beautiful name frankly, and give that to a sorceress who's going to be dragging it behind her and going, my meteor does more damage because I've got a big stick. Like, that doesn't make sense and it's silly. By all means, you should be able to have weapons like that that have modifiers that affect spells directly, like enhanced spell damage or enhanced elemental damage or whatever arbitrary example you need. That's fine, but don't scale directly off weapon damage, or I believe you've just got it as 1 stat attack. I think again that's dumbing it down for the sake of making it look clean or simpler, and it will result in limiting build diversity and also just making it a bit nonsensical. I also think you should be able to add to weapons at the very least themes or abilities that are specific to the weapon. Back in Diablo 2, blunt weapons did more damage to the undead, and obviously the reasoning behind that was blunt weapons could break bones easier, for example. That made sense, whereas there was not really any of that in Diablo 3. It made your two-handers all feel the same despite there being a difference in weapon attack speed. There was no real differentiating factor between them. So I didn't care if I had a two-handed spear or a two-handed sword. There was literally no other reason other than the damage number to influence my decision. So in short, I think it would be very beneficial, even just from like a lore immersion perspective, to make the base weapons more distinctive other than a visual effect or speed. I'm going to leave it there for now. I think I've gone on long enough. There are other things that I could go into, but I might save that for another video. I hope that all made sense. If you, Blizzard, want to ask me anything, feel free to reach out. Or if anyone watching the video has anything that you want to chime in with, or bounce some questions off me, or maybe just tell me that I'm a potato. Either way, we're all here to have fun. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video? Question mark? Woo! Social media and things. And I should probably tell you to like, subscribe, or whatever. Just do what you want to, do you? I appreciate you. Bye.